So, my partner and I had a discussion the other day about the gap in generational mentalities regarding possessions. I brought up an interesting instance of it in another video recently, in how I don't understand how people seem to have a prolonged attachment to possessions that are no longer theirs, and how that doesn't quite transcend to their children or grandchildren as much because we simply do not have an accumulation of wealth to covet. So it's weird and inconvenient for our generation to have that imposed on us sometimes with hand me downs. I'm going to be using generalized terms in this video, such as boomers and millennials. I am not intentionally targeting or stereotyping a group in its entirety. These terms are used to speak to my experience in the wealthier, currently 60 plus, white, middle aged, upper middle class of my area as boomers, and mine and my social circle's own demographics as millennials. It's okay if you do not fit these or do not agree with them. That disclaimer out of the way, the thing that we were faced with in our discussion recently was something that I can only describe as an inherently millennial indignation to the hypocritical treatment of possessions by the older generation. We, millennials, are the first adult generation to feel the sting of the North American dream and all of its false promises. As disadvantaged as Gen Z is, they were not sold the exact same thing as we were as children. Millennials, who are now parents themselves, are living in a system of debt which is all that Gen Z has ever known. But millennials, as kids, now grown adults, looking at our parents, we see wealth that we do not and cannot have. Savings, 401ks, houses, literal just like owning your possessions instead of constantly leasing or renting or having payment plans on things. Despite having so many nice things and having a bit of a hoarder attachment to them, boomers are negligent because of that environment of excess. They, as in most boomers, did not work as hard to have the things that they have as millennials now have to for the same things. So our awareness of their wealth is more grounded, you could say. Although boomers feel that they deserve their possessions, they're also caught in a trap of undervaluing them overall, since they're seen as a given. What do I mean by that? Well, look at Facebook Marketplace. People will put up listings for things that they've put wear on for years and then still expect to get over 2/3 of the price that a new product would cost. It's the delusion of worth of one's possessions. Although, at the same time, it is not something they actually value because they're not keeping it. To them, the value is null, and yet they insist that others find its value far greater than it is. Boomers will hold onto worthless items they don't even want if they don't get the price they desire, whereas more practical people are willing to take whatever deal gets it out of their lives. This can extend to possessions generally. Someone in this mindset can own 3 lawnmowers, and though they only need one and the other 2 are worthless to them, they'll be damned if anyone takes the other 2 off their hands for any less than more than they're worth. And the thing that never quite translates to this weird hang-up is depreciation. Not only do the 2 unused lawnmowers cost space and inconvenience to keep, not taking a deal to get rid of them sooner than later should realistically mean that the deal you make later will be even lesser, because they've depreciated. The boomers in my personal life are very much like this. Where possessions will be hoarded in the delusion that they will be worth as much later, they are also, in turn, neglected because they are an accumulation of excess and little actual value. The hypothetical lawnmowers will get roughly covered with a tarp and left to rust out on a lawn for a decade, rather than accept the couple $100 that they could have gotten for them in the moment, because it wasn't enough hundreds of bucks. And seeing this is very frustrating for the millennial generation, who does not have things and cannot reason with the boomers who ought to reasonably relinquish what they don't need, don't even want, but would rather watch things rot than let someone else benefit more than they see fit. It's wasteful, It's selfish, and personally, I think it's dumb as fuck. But the instance that my partner and I were working through was still even a little bit different than that, because there is a carelessness inherent to that whole mentality that even includes possessions that boomers do value and use and want to keep. When you don't struggle as much to have the things that you have, you tend to undervalue them, not fiscally, but mentally. Like, if you can afford to be in a car crash, you will drive more carelessly. Nobody wants to be in a car crash, obviously, but someone with a good insurance and a support network around them aren't constantly intrusively aware of how fucked their life would be if they got in an accident and then couldn't pay for repairs or couldn't function in their daily lives to pay for all the other things they need, like groceries and food. Or rent. I don't have any better words to describe this than to say some people can afford to be more careless, and it shows. And when you can't afford to be careless, watching other people be so with their possessions is really bothersome. What started our whole conversation was my partner noticing there was a tree on his parents' property about to fall on a trailer with their ATV and snowmobile on it, both of which are luxuries that we couldn't fathom owning ourselves, even. We couldn't move the trailer for them, and the process to get it moved took days because of his father's disorganization, locking the trailer hitch and losing the keys. The amount of time it took to resolve and the mobiles being in danger was not the real bothersome thing, though it was anxiety-inducing. Because in response to this, an arborist was called to trim the herd, take away dying trees or ones that would be dangerous to the property installations should they snap with any big storm, which we have been getting a lot of recently. And there's a cluster of them around the property's literal propane tank that got marked for takedown, especially because eventually there will be a garage right there, next to there someday, and his mother was really hesitant about cutting them down. Like, do we have to cut them all down? And I just don't get it. We're both a little miffed about the pushback on something that is not just necessary, but preventative. Because we're sitting here wondering, why is this even a question? Why would you take the risk? When it comes between less risk to your possessions and more risk, why are we humoring any potential risk to your possessions? And it just hit us, this stark contrast between mentalities of the have-nots and the have-lots. The dominant emotion we're feeling is jealousy, that we do not have things to be so careless about. No property or houses or ATVs, but I also think it's reasonable to just be bothered by carelessness and wastefulness, of hoarding and neglecting things, and how those two go so strangely hand in hand. How can people value things enough to hoard them in excess and then also take care of none of them so they lose more value than was ever justifiably saved? And I just felt like these emotions are a uniquely millennial rage, because especially considering we're the ones set to inherit all their stuff by the time it truly has lost all of its value. Yet another bit of fuckery that we must watch unfold and be burdened with in the aftermath.